The chamber where the congressional hearing was taking place gradually sank into a profound silence as Representative Jasmine Crockett gently adjusted her microphone, the slight movement punctuating the expectant hush that had settled over the room. Her striking red blazer, vibrant and eye-catching, stood out sharply against the dark, polished mahogany panels that lined the walls, giving an impression of both confidence and authority. Opposite her, sitting with impeccable posture and an air of calm composure, was Pam Bondi, the former Attorney General of Florida. Her blonde hair was meticulously styled, and a self-assured smile played upon her lips, an expression that seemed frozen in time, ready to project unwavering certainty. Just moments before, Bondi had delivered a critique so pointed and sharply worded that many in the room considered it highly acerbic, branding Democratic policies as divisive and damaging to the nation's core values. Throughout her speech, her eyes repeatedly flicked towards Crockett, as if aiming to provoke or challenge the younger congresswoman from Texas. The atmosphere in the chamber was thick with tension, a palpable sense of conflict and anticipation hanging in the air, as Crockett, a former public defender known for her resilience and refusal to back down under pressure, leaned slightly forward in her seat. Her gaze remained fixed on Bondi, signaling her readiness to respond. With a clear and steady voice that carried the weight of conviction, Crockett addressed her opponent, beginning with a respectful yet firm tone. "Miss Bondi," she said, her words measured but underlined with unwavering determination. "I have been listening patiently to your testimony, but I believe there are significant issues that must be confronted and clarified." The audience in the gallery responded immediately, phones already lifted, screens ready to record the unfolding exchange. No one was prepared for what would unfold over the next 5 minutes. An impeccably delivered takedown so precise and devastating that political analysts would be dissecting it for months, and Bondi's credibility, once seemingly unassailable, would suffer lasting damage from which she would find it difficult to recover. Before we delve into this extraordinary clash of political titans, it is worth noting the context. This was a House Oversight Committee hearing focused on government accountability, a session that had been ongoing for nearly 2 hours. Pam Bondi, who had previously served as Florida's top legal officer and had become a familiar face on conservative media outlets as a frequent commentator, had been invited as an expert witness, representing the Republican side of the committee. At the age of 56, Bondi carried herself with an air of confidence that came from decades of navigating the rough waters of politics and law. Her testimony was delivered with force and conviction, unapologetically criticizing Democratic policies while championing approaches aligned with conservative principles. Her polished, media-savvy style resembled that of a seasoned Fox News contributor. "The American people deserve better than policies that undermine our Constitution," she proclaimed, raising her voice just enough to sound both passionate and authoritative, an expression of her firm belief in her position. She continued, "Throughout my career, I have dedicated myself to upholding the rule of law, and what I am witnessing today from certain members of Congress appears nothing short of an attempt to distort and rewrite the fundamental principles upon which our nation was built." Her gaze would occasionally drift toward Crockett, almost challenging her to respond, to test her resolve, embodying an unspoken confrontation that hung in the air. Jasmine Crockett, meanwhile, was everything that Bondi was not: fresh, authentic, and unflinchingly direct. At the age of 42, she had made her mark before entering the political arena as a civil rights attorney, renowned for her dedication to defending marginalized communities and challenging systemic injustice. Her election to Congress had been a historic milestone, a progressive Black woman representing Texas, known for speaking plainly and refusing to conform to traditional political decorum. Unlike Bondi, whose polished appearance and carefully scripted speech seemed designed to project control and composure. Crocketts' approach was unpretentious and genuine. Her background in law was evident in the deliberate, methodical way she posed her questions, carefully dissecting each argument and exposing inconsistencies with a calm yet penetrating style. Her presence in the chamber was a reminder of the diverse voices that had long been calling for a more honest and transparent government. Voices that refused to be silenced or subdued by conventional political theatrics. The clash between Bondi's polished rhetoric and Crocketts' raw authenticity encapsulated the ongoing ideological battle, one rooted in tradition and hierarchy, the other in progress and reform. An intense moment that would be remembered long after the hearing concluded. Beneath her outwardly poised and composed exterior, Crockett had dedicated the better part of her morning hours to meticulous preparation. She had been diligently constructing a compelling case, carefully organizing facts, research, and evidence that could challenge and undermine the assertions made by her opponent. As Bondi took the stand to testify, Crockett's team members had been quietly passing her notes, small slips of paper with vital information, along with well-researched data and documents that painted a very different picture from the one Bondi was trying to present. These materials formed a subtle yet powerful undercurrent of opposition, ready to be introduced at the appropriate moment. On her tablet, Crockett had assembled a detailed timeline that chronicled Bondi's entire professional career. This document highlighted a series of contradictions, controversial decisions, and instances that raised questions about potential conflicts of interest, issues that had not been scrutinized in public before. These were carefully laid out to reveal a pattern of behavior that, once laid bare, could cast doubt on Bondi's credibility and impartiality. The aim was to demonstrate that her assertions might be biased or incomplete, based on a history that deserved closer examination. The timeline was a strategic tool, a visual representation of inconsistencies, designed not just to catch Bondi off guard, but to underscore that her record was far more complex than it seemed on the surface. Meanwhile, the chairman of the committee, acutely aware of the rising tension and the implications of this confrontation, sought to maintain order and progress in the proceedings. Recognizing the significance of the upcoming exchange, he announced, with a tone of neutrality yet a touch of finality, "We will now proceed to our round of questioning. Ms. Crockett, you are allotted 5 minutes." This statement was both a procedural formality and a signal that the moment of scrutiny had arrived. Crockett responded with a respectful nod, carefully straightening her papers, signaling her readiness to engage. "Thank you, Mr. Chairman," she replied calmly. She drew a long, steadying breath, fully aware that the outcome of this session could have far-reaching consequences. The stakes were undeniably high. This wasn't merely about questioning a witness, but about exposing what she believed to be years of hypocrisy and deception that had gone unchecked. She knew that the public deserved transparency and honesty, especially when the reputation of someone like Bondi, with her polished image, was on the line. To Crockett, this was more than a political contest. It was about revealing truths that had been concealed behind a carefully crafted veneer of authority and virtue. In the viewing gallery, where reporters and journalists watched the proceedings keenly, many leaned forward, their curiosity piqued. They knew that Crockett's questions had the potential to be newsworthy, capable of shifting public opinion or exposing dirty laundry previously obscured from the light. Yet, her composure and demeanor suggested that she was prepared not just for routine questions, but for something much more significant. There was an edge to her confidence, a hint that she intended to challenge, if not dismantle, her opponent's credibility. Meanwhile, some members of the committee, notably those representing the Republican side, shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They read the signals clearly, They sensed that Crockett might be walking into a trap, or perhaps was unknowingly setting one for herself. Despite this, they maintained their poses, adjusting microphones and exchanging cautious glances. Crockett, for her part, kept her smile steady, projecting confidence that was rooted in her experience. She had faced difficult questioning before, had endured intense scrutiny, and had always emerged resilient. Her track record reinforced her belief that she could handle whatever was to come. She had no reason to doubt her ability to stay unscathed in this confrontation. But, as she finally opened her mouth to begin her line of questioning, that self-assurance was about to be put to a severe test. Her calm, measured voice echoed throughout the hearing room, yet there was a firmness that commanded attention, leaving no room for doubt. "Miss Bondi," Crockett started, her tone clear and direct, carrying her words with the precision of someone who knew the importance of every syllable. "Today, you have presented yourself as an authority, an expert, on matters of government accountability and constitutional principles. Before we proceed further, I believe it is essential to clarify and establish certain facts about your own record, as they are relevant to the credibility of the testimony you are providing." She paused, giving a moment for her words to resonate before glancing down at her notes briefly, gathering her thoughts. Then, looking back up with a piercing focus that demanded attention, Crockett asked, "You served as Florida's Attorney General from the year 2011 until the year 2019. Is that correct?" Her voice was measured, yet unmistakably confident. Bondi, without hesitation, nodded confidently. "Yes," she replied succinctly. "Elected twice by the people of Florida." Her tone conveyed pride, but Crockett pressed on, seeking to establish a factual foundation for her line of questioning. Crockett then brought up a point that would likely be seen as provocative, yet was crucial to her investigation. "And during your tenure as Attorney General, you received a donation of $25,000 from the Trump Foundation, just a few days after your office announced it was considering joining an investigation into Trump University," she stated carefully, making sure the timing was highlighted. Her words hung in the air, provocative and precise. She continued, "Is that correct?" The question hit like a thunderbolt in the quiet of the hearing room. Bondi's confident demeanor flickered for a moment. Her smile faltered slightly. She responded, "That matter was fully addressed years ago," trying to dismiss the relevance of the donation. Crockett, unwavering, pressed on. "I'd like to hear your interpretation of that situation," she said, her tone measured but firm. "Did you receive the donation?" she asked directly. "Yes or no?" she added, emphasizing the need for a straightforward answer. Bondi hesitated just briefly before responding, "Yes," realizing that there was little room to escape the question. Crockett nodded slightly, not allowing her opponent to regain control of the narrative. She then shifted her focus, continuing her line of inquiry without giving Bondi a chance to defend her previous statement or to deflect. "After receiving that donation," she proceeded, "your office decided not to pursue the Trump University investigation, despite receiving multiple complaints from Florida citizens who believed they had been defrauded," she stated with deliberate emphasis. Her words underscored the gravity of the issue, highlighting a pattern of potential misconduct or bias. As she posed this question, the camera captured Bondi's reactions, her jaw tightening and a flicker of tension crossing her face, suggesting that the implications were hitting home. The investigation was approaching a critical juncture, and Crockett was determined to expose any inconsistencies or conflicts that could undermine the credibility of Bondi's testimony. In this moment, it became clear that Crockett's preparation, focus, and resolve had brought her to the brink of a confrontation that could shift the balance of the entire hearing. The truth, she believed, was within reach, and she was committed to revealing it, no matter how challenging the questions or how uncomfortable the answers. The situation was misrepresented, and there's a need to set the record straight. My office thoroughly examined the complaints that had been brought forward, and after careful review, a clear conclusion was reached. Miss Bondi, before she could finish her statement, was interrupted once again by Congressman Crockett. Despite the rising tension filling the room, her voice remained calm and steady, signaling a composed resolve as she faced yet another challenge. Throughout the day, she had spoken extensively about the importance of government accountability and transparency, principles that underpin a healthy democratic society. Her words carried weight, especially given her background, which made some observers take notice. It seemed somewhat ironic that someone with a history marred by questionable ethical judgments felt in a position to lecture others, specifically Congress, about the necessity of honesty and integrity within governmental institutions. As Crockett's interruption persisted, members of the committee, particularly the Republican representatives, began shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Some glanced at each other, perhaps sensing the tension was reaching a critical point. At this moment, Congressman James Farwell leaned forward slightly toward his microphone. With measured clarity, he addressed the chairman. "Mr. Chairman, I believe that Representative Crockett is unfairly pressuring the witness with questions that are not relevant to today's hearing." The chairman observed the exchange intently, casting a scrutinizing glance between Crockett and Bondi. He then gently reminded Crockett, "Please make sure your questions are pertinent to the subject matter we are discussing today." Crockett, however, responded without hesitation, her voice steady despite the formal rebuke. "With all due respect, Mr. Chairman, I am simply asking questions that are directly related to her credibility and the matters at hand." Miss Bondi began her testimony by openly criticizing what she termed political prosecutions, an issue that had garnered significant public attention. She questioned the integrity of some of the Democratic members serving on the committee, asserting that her perspective on credibility and honesty was relevant to the discussion. Turning her focus directly onto Bondi, Crockett challenged her further. Her expression, usually composed and controlled, showed signs of slight strain as she responded. "Let's move on," she said, attempting to steer the conversation forward. She then posed a pointed question about Bondi's past statements. "In your testimony, you condemned what you call political prosecutions. Yet, in the year 2016, while still serving as Florida's Attorney General, you publicly spoke at the Republican National Convention. During that event, you led a chant of 'Lock her up,' directed at Hillary Clinton, who at the time had not been formally charged with any crime. How do you reconcile your current concerns about the politicization of justice with that behavior?" The chamber grew noticeably more restless, with several journalists frantically typing on their phones, capturing every moment. Bondi's cheeks flushed slightly, betraying her discomfort. She attempted to justify her actions by saying, "I was different then. The context was different then." Crockett, clearly seeking clarification, pressed on with a sharper tone but maintained control over her words. "In what way was it different?" she asked. "Was it because she was your political opponent?" she continued. "Or is it because the rules seem to apply differently depending on whom you're targeting?" Her voice, although firm, remained within the bounds of professionalism. "Please, explain to the committee how such behavior doesn't constitute a political prosecution, the very thing you claim to oppose," Crockett demanded. Bondi, feeling the pressure, straightened herself in her chair, visibly struggling to regain her composure. "Representative Crockett," she began, her voice slightly strained, "I came here today to discuss serious policy issues and not to have my character attacked based on selective facts taken out of context." Crockett raised an eyebrow, signaling her intent to continue pushing. All I am asking is for you to clarify how your past actions align with the principles you publicly uphold. She responded calmly. If recounting your public record appears to be an attack on your character, then perhaps that is an issue worth reflecting upon. A murmur spread through the gallery as these words resonated with many in attendance. Bondi's face darkened, and she looked momentarily taken aback. Just as she was about to reply, Crockett resumed her questioning by tapping on her tablet to bring up a relevant document. "Let's discuss your recent activities," she said. "After leaving your official position, you joined the White House team to assist with the defense during the impeachment proceedings in 2020. Is that correct?" Bondi nodded stiffly, confirming her statement. "Yes," she replied. "I was proud to serve the president and to defend him against what I still believe to have been an unconstitutional process." This exchange underscored not only the ongoing tension between the two women, but also raised broader questions about consistency in principles, the nature of political actions, and the intricate ways in which personal history and public statements can come under scrutiny during critical hearings. Shortly after stepping away from her previous roles and responsibilities, Crockett proceeded to clarify certain points, emphasizing some specific details about Bondi's recent activities. He pointed out that she had begun to appear on Fox News on a regular basis, not as an ordinary guest, but as a paid contributor. In this capacity, she frequently defended policies enacted by the very administration she had previously contributed to shaping and promoting through her prior work. Additionally, Crockett highlighted that Bondi had taken a position on the board of an organization called America First Policies, a group known for its strong pro-Trump stance and its notable lack of transparency regarding its funding sources, as it refused to disclose its donors. The inquiry was aimed at establishing whether her involvement in these activities accurately reflected her public stance and professional history. In response, Bondi admitted that she had indeed affiliated herself with these organizations. Her reply was straightforward, without attempt to obscure or deny her actions. She expressed some confusion regarding the intent behind Crockett's persistent questioning, indicating that she did not fully understand the point he was trying to make. Her tone carried a slight edge of defensiveness as she sought to clarify her position, emphasizing that her political beliefs and erstwhile affiliations had been open and not hidden in any way. She contrasted her transparency with what she portrayed as the hypocrisy of some other individuals present, who, she claimed, went through elaborate pretenses of objectivity while allegedly promoting radical or extreme agendas under the guise of neutrality. The chairman, observing the exchange, gently tapped his gavel, signaling that it was time for a more direct answer. He requested that Bondi respond explicitly to the question posed. Slightly irritated, Bondi smoothed her expression and acknowledged her involvement, confirming that she had, indeed, joined those organizations. However, she also expressed her uncertainty regarding the underlying message Crockett intended to convey by this line of questioning, seeming somewhat bewildered by the implication that her associations might undermine her credibility. Crockett, leaning forward slightly, made his intentions clear with a careful, deliberate tone. His main concern was about the importance of transparency and consistency in public service and political life. He pointed out that Bondi had previously criticized what she termed the revolving door phenomenon, where individuals move back and forth between government positions and roles in private interest groups, often raising concerns about conflicts of interest. Yet, he argued, her own career trajectory appeared to mirror exactly that same pattern. Her involvement with the organizations he mentioned seemed to exemplify the very issues she had publicly criticized. From her side, Representative Taylor, a Republican representing Ohio, interjected in defense of Bondi, asserting that Crockett's line of questioning was nothing more than an attempt to undermine her character. She urged the committee to show her more respect and suggested that such tactics were inappropriate, framing them as personal attacks rather than legitimate inquiries. Crockett responded to her by turning directly toward her, affirming that holding public officials accountable for their words and actions is a fundamental part of their duty. He emphasized that Bondi had come to testify willingly, offering her expertise on matters of ethics and accountability, and that her own ethical record was inherently relevant to the credibility and value of her testimony. The room grew quiet for a moment, as Crockett refocused his attention squarely on Bondi. Her composure, which had remained relatively steady at first, began to visibly crack. What had started as mild discomfort slowly evolved into clear agitation. She shifted in her seat, her knuckles whitening as she clenched her fists around the edge of the table. Her attempt to maintain a calm facade was gradually giving way to an underlying frustration and tension. In her prepared remarks for the day, Bondi had asserted that certain members of the committee, and she explicitly quoted, had prioritized party loyalty over the good of the country. Yet, Crockett reminded everyone of her previous comments from 2018, when she dismissively characterized alarming reports of foreign interference in U.S. elections as mere partisan distractions. He questioned her reasoning. If election security is so vital and nonpartisan, why had she previously dismissed concerns that involved foreign influence, framing them instead as political ploys? Bondi responded heatedly, denying that she had ever made the statement Crockett attributed to her. Her voice rose slightly as she insisted that her words had been misrepresented and that Crockett was twisting her statements. To bolster her position, Crockett calmly produced a printed transcript of her actual interview, offering it as a record of her previous remarks. He proposed to have it formally entered into the official record, making her earlier comments indisputable and accessible for review. The atmosphere in the hearing room had noticeably changed by this point. What had begun as a standard committee proceeding, an exercise in oversight and inquiry, had transformed into a meticulous and relentless examination. Crockett was not merely questioning Bondi to elicit her testimony, but was systematically exposing inconsistencies between her public declarations and her past actions or statements. He was drawing attention to the disconnects between the principles she claimed to uphold and her real-world record, revealing potential contradictions that could impact her credibility. Throughout this tense exchange, members and observers with mobile phones continuously recorded every nuance, the shifts in Bondi's expression, her mounting discomfort, Crockett's unwavering focus, and precise questioning. The scene was no longer just a routine hearing, but a calculated and deliberate effort to scrutinize her integrity and honesty. It was clear that this interaction extended beyond simple political questioning. It was a carefully orchestrated demonstration of accountability and the importance of truthfulness in public service. What unfolded in that courtroom would be remembered for a long time, a moment of public scrutiny so intense and revealing that neither Bondi nor any observer present could hope to forget it anytime soon. The chairman, sitting upright, cast a quick glance at the clock, indicating that there was little time remaining before the proceedings concluded. Across from him, Representative Crockett, a figure known for his precision and sharp attention to detail, watched as the seconds ticked away. The clock's faint ticking seemed almost to emphasize the importance of what was about to be said. Crockett knew that only about a minute remained before he would be required to deliver a final, decisive statement, an opportunity to cut to the very core of the issue. He nodded silently, acknowledging that the moment had arrived to pack the most impactful punch he could muster. Prior to this final confrontation, Crockett had spent the past several minutes carefully constructing his case. He had methodically laid out a series of arguments, each one designed to expose inconsistencies, contradictions, and questionable decisions woven throughout Bondi's public and professional history. These 4 minutes of meticulous questioning served as the foundation, an intense, detailed unveiling of what Crockett saw as a pattern of ethical lapses and shifting principles. As he observed Bondi during this process, He noted that her usual composure, typical of a seasoned attorney general, was gradually giving way. Her practiced poise was visibly shaken, replaced by a defensive anger that flashed briefly across her face, betraying her mounting discomfort and awareness of the mounting evidence against her. Now, with her composure fraying and her face betraying signs of agitation, Crockett prepared to synthesize everything into a compelling closing statement. Addressing her directly, he began in a steady, controlled tone. Calm, yet imbued with undeniable authority. "Miss Bondi," he started, drawing her attention with deliberate clarity. "I would like to draw your focus to the screen in front of us." He gestured to a staff member, who promptly activated a split-screen display that brought into view two separate sets of statements, one from the past and one from the recent present. On the left side of the screen appeared her words from the year 2017, in which she declared, and I quote, "Public officials must be held to the highest ethical standards. There can be no exceptions, no special treatment based on political connections." Meanwhile, on the right side was her statement from the previous month, where she had defended officials who refused to comply with congressional subpoenas, describing those subpoenas as nothing more than political harassment. The stark difference between these two positions was impossible to ignore. It was conspicuous, glaring even, and made an indelible impression on everyone present. Murmurs of surprise and curiosity rippled softly through the gallery as spectators and members of the committee looked at her and then back at the contrasting statements displayed on the screen. Bondi, for her part, gazed fixedly at the images, her face frozen, her expression caught between surprise and silence. Crockett pressed on, his voice rising just slightly to convey a sense of controlled passion.
"The American people are not fools,"
he emphasized, making sure that each word carried the weight of conviction. "They are capable of recognizing when someone applies double standards, when principles are discarded or compromised depending on what is politically convenient or advantageous." He then reached into a thick folder, evidence accumulated over time, held it up for everyone to see, and declared, "I have here in my hands documentation of 27 different instances where your public statements and actions directly conflict with each other." These were 27 separate occasions, Crockett explained, when her words or actions appeared to shift depending on which party was in control or who was under investigation at the moment. Every contradiction, each inconsistency, served as a piece of the puzzle revealing a pattern. Carefully, deliberately, he placed the folder down on the table before her. "You began this testimony," Crockett continued, "by questioning the integrity of this very committee. You presented yourself as an authority on constitutional principles and an advocate for ethical governance. Yet," he said, "the record reveals a troubling pattern, a consistent display of selective ethics and partisan favoritism. Your principles seem to bend or break depending on who holds power or who is being scrutinized." The effect was immediate. Bondi's face went from composed to deep red, her cheeks flushing with a mixture of embarrassment and outrage. "This is outrageous!" she exclaimed, her voice trembling slightly with indignation. "I have served the public honorably for decades. I have dedicated my career to principles of integrity." But Crockett was undeterred. He interrupted quietly but firmly. "You have cherry-picked your statements to craft a false narrative, Miss Bondi. These are your own words, your actions, your decisions. If they create an uncomfortable or inconvenient story, perhaps the issue lies not with the questions we're asking, but with the choices you've made along the way." The gallery erupted into a wave of murmurs, some surprised, others impressed by the methodical dismantling of her defenses. Several members of the committee exchanged glances, stunned by the clarity and precision of Crockett's arguments. The members on the Republican side, recognizing the thoroughness of the assault on her credibility, shifted uneasily in their seats, acutely aware that their expert witness had just been thoroughly exposed. Turning to address the entire assembly, Crockett finally made his formal proposal.
Mr. Chairman,
He began, his tone respectful but firm.
I move that Miss Bondi's full record, particularly the contradictions I have highlighted today, be entered into the official congressional record. It is essential that the American people be given the opportunity to judge for themselves whether she remains a credible voice on matters of ethics, accountability, and constitutional principles.
His words left no room for doubt. This was a final push to ensure transparency, to let the evidence speak for itself, and to allow the public to draw their own conclusions based on the documented facts and inconsistencies that had now been laid bare for all to see. The chairman nodded slowly, his expression still lingering with a hint of disbelief, as if the impact of the exchange he had just witnessed had left him momentarily stunned. His gaze remained fixed, yet there was an unmistakable cloud of shock lingering in his eyes, a reflection of the unexpected intensity of what had just transpired within the walls of the hearing room. Without any objection or hesitation, Crockett gathered her notes with a calm, deliberate motion, her demeanor composed and unflustered amid the chaos unfolding around her. She calmly declared her intention to conclude her remarks, stating simply, "I yield back the remaining time," allowing the moment to settle before the room erupted into a flurry of activity. As soon as her words faded, the entire landscape of the hearing room shifted dramatically. The previously subdued atmosphere was replaced by an unstoppable surge of energy and movement. Journalists, ever vigilant and eager to capture every pivotal moment, swiftly rushed toward their recording devices, eager to file stories that would soon appear across newspapers, websites, and broadcasts. Notifications flashed continuously on social media platforms, their chiming sounds filling the gallery as short clips and snippets of the showdown made their way online, drawing immediate attention from viewers across the nation. Members of the committee leaned toward one another, speaking in hushed, hurried whispers, urgently exchanging opinions about the implications of what they had just witnessed. In stark contrast to this tumult, Palm Bondi sat utterly motionless, her eyes fixed straight ahead, seemingly unresponsive to the chaos swirling around her. Her meticulously constructed public image, once polished and confident, lay in ruins, shattered amid the fierce questioning. What had initially appeared as a routine, predictable hearing had unexpectedly transformed into a defining moment, a turning point that would resonate far beyond these few minutes. Within the span of merely 5 minutes, Representative Jasmine Crockett had not only challenged Bondi's carefully rehearsed testimony, she had systematically dismantled her entire credibility. She had exposed a pattern of hypocrisy and opportunism that was impossible to dismiss or rationalize away, revealing vulnerabilities that could no longer be ignored. Bondi finally reached for her water glass, her hand trembling visibly as she did so. With trembling fingers, she took a sip, and every movement was caught by the multitude of cameras that documented every detail of her visibly shaken state. This was not just a difficult moment. It was a pivotal event where the carefully maintained facade of confidence and righteousness was slowly crumbling right in front of the entire country's eyes, live on national television through the C-SPAN broadcast. The spectacle was overwhelming, a stark contrast to her previous composed persona, bearing the unmistakable traces of vulnerability and distress. Meanwhile, the Republican members of the committee, who had initially invited Bondi as their star witness, found themselves ensnared in an impossible dilemma. Supporting her publicly now meant endorsing the contradictions and ethical questions that Crockett had so effectively illuminated, potentially damaging their own credibility in the process. On the other hand, distancing themselves from Bondi would require admitting that they had placed their trust in someone whose reputation was now evidently in tatters, its credibility irreparably compromised. The decision hung heavily in the air as the chairman announced a brief 10-minute recess, a moment intended to give everyone a chance to regroup. During this pause, Bonnie, visibly overwhelmed and perhaps realizing that her carefully laid plans were unraveling, leaned toward her lawyer with a sense of urgency. Her whispers carried the weight of realization. Whatever strategy they had premeditated for this hearing, be it deflection, denial, or another form of defense, had clearly failed spectacularly in the face of Crockett's relentless questioning. The damage control efforts had already begun, but both she and her counsel knew all too well that some wounds inflicted on public trust and reputation cut too deeply to be fully healed in the short term. The scars of this confrontation would linger long after the hearing ended, casting shadows over Bondi's career and public image. On the other side of the room, Crockett took a moment to accept a bottle of water from her aide. Her face betrayed no signs of triumphalism or gloating. Instead, there was a quiet, measured satisfaction, the calm exuded of a seasoned prosecutor who had just successfully laid bare the truth. Her expression reflected nothing more than a sense of professional fulfillment, an affirmation that her duty to hold power accountable had been fulfilled with clarity and conviction. For Crockett, this was not about personal victory, nor about scoring points. It was about the essential principle of accountability. It was about ensuring that those who hold public office or wield influence could no longer hide behind polished rhetoric or selective memories, shielded from scrutiny by their own carefully crafted images. Soon, the video footage of Crockett's pointed questioning began to circulate rapidly across social media platforms, spreading like wildfire. Clips of her probing interrogation and Bondi's exposed vulnerabilities were shared countless times, quickly becoming viral sensations. Within mere minutes, nationwide trending topics emerged as millions of Americans watched and commented, some noting with admiration, others with skepticism, on the powerful exchange. Many viewers added captions and remarks such as, "Watch Jasmine Crockett destroy Pam Bondi in just 5 minutes," emphasizing the sheer impact of the confrontation. This moment epitomized what it truly meant to hold those in power accountable, to demand transparency and honesty when it mattered most. For Jasmine Crockett, this was simply another day fulfilling her constitutional duty, a fundamental part of her role representing the people, ensuring they are safeguarded from deception and dishonesty. For Pam Bondi, however, this incident marked the beginning of an entirely new chapter, one characterized by a diminished public profile, where her previous statements and claims would forever be viewed through the critical lens of those 5 brutal minutes. Her reputation, once built with care and strategic messaging, had now been compromised in a way that was unlikely to be fully remedied, casting a long shadow over her future endeavors. In essence, this scene was a vivid illustration of the stark realities of political and public accountability. It showcased how a single, intense exchange could serve as a powerful reminder that those entrusted with leadership bear a heavy responsibility to truth and integrity, and how moments of vulnerability, especially when exposed on a national stage, can redefine careers and reshape public perceptions forever. The repercussions of Jasmine Crockett's meticulous and sharply focused takedown of Pam Bondi extended far beyond the immediate confines of the congressional hearing chamber where the confrontation had taken place. In fact, within a matter of only a few hours, the intense 5-minute exchange was rapidly spreading across various social media platforms, amassing over 10 million views from audiences worldwide, eager to see this remarkable display of scrutiny and verbal dexterity. News outlets, both major and minor, quickly caught on to the viral momentum, replaying the clips multiple times in rapid succession and engaging analysts to dissect every question Crockett posed, every response Bondi gave, and even noting each flicker of discomfort that crossed Bondi's face under pressure. The drama was palpable, and commentators found a wealth of material to discuss, often emphasizing how this exchange went far beyond typical political debates. One prominent voice among these observers was Abby Phillips, CNN's leading political correspondent, who succinctly summarized the tone and significance of the moment. According to her, what unfolded before the cameras was more than mere political theater. It was, in many ways, a powerful lesson in holding public officials accountable for their words and actions. Crockett, actively armed with a solid arsenal of facts, references, and even exact quotations from Bondi's own past statements, challenged her with precision. It was clear that this wasn't a casual or partisan skirmish, but rather a deliberate attempt to reveal underlying inconsistencies and hypocrisies that had long been hidden beneath the surface of political rhetoric. Crockett's approach was strategic and directly aimed at exposing double standards and the often shifty nature of those entrusted with public service. She did not merely engage in partisan name-calling or personal attack. Instead, she used the tools of transparency, real evidence, documented records, and verifiable facts to construct a compelling narrative that cast light on Bondi's record and conduct. As the country followed this fiery exchange unfold, the impact of Crockett's words was immediate and unmistakable. By the evening, Pam Bondi's team issued a brief statement, asserting that her words might have been taken out of context and that she still stood by her testimony. Nevertheless, the damage was already done. The clip was circulating widely, and the public discourse had shifted. Furthermore, the viral exchange sparked a wave of social media activity, with hashtags related both to Crockett's sharp interrogation and Bondi's reactions trending relentlessly for days. Millions of people shared clips of the confrontation, creating memes and other content that amplified the moment's significance. The story became a trending topic across multiple online platforms, symbolizing a triumph of accountability and transparency in an environment often criticized for shielding public officials from scrutiny. Adding to the political consequences, prominent commentators, including Van Jones, did not hold back in their analysis during their evening broadcasts. Jones described how Pam Bondi initially entered the hearing room with a reputation as a respected former state attorney general, someone admired for her experience and professionalism. Yet, by the time she left, the perception had shifted dramatically. She was now being portrayed as a symbol of political hypocrisy, an emblem of how appearances of authority can be compromised under pressure. Crockett, for her part, had not attacked her opponent's character directly. Instead, she had simply held up a mirror, one reflecting Bondi's own record, actions, and statements that had, until that moment, been taken at face value. The reflection, unfortunately for Bondi, was brutally honest and highly damaging, riddling her image with doubt and criticism. The professional fallout for Bondi was swift and severe. In the days immediately following the incident, her schedule was quietly rearranged to avoid public appearances in prominent news programs, where her credibility had evidently taken a significant hit. An invitation from a well-regarded law school to deliver a keynote speech on ethics and public service was rescinded under the pretext of a scheduling conflict, but insiders confirmed that the real reason stemmed from her viral confrontation with Crockett. The controversy had made her a liability in some circles. Moreover, boards of directors at 3 major corporations where Bondi served on the governance or ethics committees called emergency meetings to deliberate whether her continued association might damage their corporate images. The discussions were intense and urgent, reflecting fears that her participation might be perceived as endorsing or tolerating the contradictions she had exposed publicly. Perhaps most conspicuous was her sudden absence from Fox News, where she had regularly contributed as a commentator. According to network sources who requested anonymity, her recent bookings were abruptly halted, with instructions given to the production team to suspend her appearances until further notice. One insider explained that her embarrassment was only part of the story. Crockett's pointed questions had uncovered discrepancies that rendered it difficult for Bondi to maintain her facade as a credible legal and ethical expert. Her previous reputation, built over years, now seemed fragile and vulnerable in the face of this stark exposure. The political fallout extended well beyond Bondi personally. Members of the Republican Party privately expressed frustration and disappointment, acknowledging that their effort to position her as an authoritative voice had backfired spectacularly. One senior Republican aide candidly admitted that Crockett's masterful deconstruction had not only dismantled Bondi's case, but also exposed the larger inadequacies in their messaging strategy. "We put her forward as our expert witness," he said, "and she got utterly eviscerated. Crockett didn't just win that exchange. She made us look utterly foolish for believing Bondi was the right person to carry our narrative." This episode served as a stark reminder that in the fiercely competitive arena of political rhetoric and public perception, no one was invulnerable to sharp scrutiny and truthful confrontation. In contrast, Democratic lawmakers responded with unequivocal support and admiration for Crockett's performance in the hearing. Recognizing her as a shining example of the kind of accountability that their party had promised to uphold, they rallied around her efforts. The Speaker of the House, Catherine Clark, publicly praised Crockett's command of the moment, emphasizing that her fearless approach exemplified the kind of integrity and transparency that voters rightfully expect from their representatives. The incident, in their view, underscored a vital shift toward holding public officials accountable more rigorously, regardless of party lines, and demonstrated the emerging power of fresh voices willing to challenge established figures with courage and conviction. Yesterday's actions by Representative Crockett serve as a shining example of why the American people entrust their representatives to Congress in the first place. Unlike many political figures who often resort to theatrical displays or grandstanding to garner attention, Crockett chose a different, more principled approach. She asked straightforward, pointed questions rooted strictly in documented facts, demonstrating a commitment to transparency and accountability. Her goal was clear: to hold a public official responsible for her words and actions, ensuring that the truth was brought to light in a direct and unambiguous manner. The influence of her conduct on her own political prospects proved to be unexpectedly significant. Overnight, her campaign fund was inundated with donations that surpassed a staggering $2 million, with contributions pouring in from supporters all across the nation. Many of the donors explicitly mentioned the Bondi exchange as a motivating factor for their generosity, seeing her stand as a symbol of integrity and courageous oversight. This surge in support was so remarkable that political analysts began to recognize her as a rising star within the political landscape. Some even speculated that her potential could extend beyond the confines of her current role, hinting at possible future bids for the Senate, or perhaps even higher, national office. The social media presence of Crockett experienced an extraordinary transformation as well. In less than 2 days, her follower count tripled, creating a new wave of digital support and visibility. What transpired was far from a fleeting viral moment driven solely by shock value. A seasoned political strategist, Donna Brazil, clarified this perspective by emphasizing that the significance lay in Crockett's conduct during the exchange. Her approach was characterized by preparation, precision, and professionalism. She did not resort to raising her voice, nor did she engage in personal insults or attacks. Instead, she simply presented the facts and allowed Bondi's own record to speak for itself. Such conduct exemplifies a style of leadership that resonates deeply with voters, one based on dignity, clarity, and respect for the truth. The broader ramifications of this exchange extended well beyond the immediate participants, making a lasting impression on the political discourse as a whole. The confrontation between Crockett and Bondi became a textbook example of effective oversight and accountability in action. It was so compelling that law schools across the country began to incorporate the footage into their curricula, specifically as a case study in cross-examination techniques. Journalism programs analyzed it as a model illustrating how public officials should be questioned when inconsistencies or inaccuracies in their records are exposed. Media trainers and political analysts alike observed how this event set a higher standard for transparency and credibility among elected representatives. Rebecca Sims, a renowned media trainer, pointed out that the exchange had elevated the bar for all public figures. They would now be expected to maintain greater consistency and accountability in their statements, aware that any contradiction could be scrutinized in real time, and that the days of vague or evasive answers were coming to an end. This shift in expectations signified profound change in the way political engagement was viewed by the general public. Citizens across America found themselves discussing the significance of this exchange in various settings, whether at work, online, or around family dinner tables. The conversation did not revolve solely around Bondi's apparent contradictions or Crockett's effective line of questioning. It fundamentally touched upon core issues of integrity in public service, questioning whether principles and values should be adaptable depending on party affiliation or if they should remain steadfast. It sparked debates about the kind of leadership Americans truly desire, leaders who prioritize truthfulness and accountability over partisan convenience. In the weeks following the hearing, Bondi herself finally broke her silence through an interview with a friendly, conservative-leaning media outlet. She attempted to dismiss the entire exchange as mere political theater, arguing that Crockett had taken her statements out of context to serve her own narrative. However, even within this sympathetic platform, the interviewer pressed her further, highlighting the specific contradictions Crockett had pointed out. The tone was straightforward. "With all due respect," the interviewer noted, "Representative Crockett quoted you exactly. She played video clips of your own statements. How can you suggest that she was taking anything out of context?" Bondi's response was hesitant, defensive, and ultimately unpersuasive. She struggled to reconcile her previous claims with the undeniable evidence presented during Crockett's questioning. This reaction only reinforced the impression that Crockett's scrutiny had laid bare uncomfortable truths, revealing inconsistencies that could not be dismissed as mere misunderstandings or misinterpretations. In sum, the events of that day exemplified the power of principled, well-prepared questioning to effect change. They underscored the importance of holding public officials accountable in a transparent, respectful manner, an approach that appeals to voters tired of double standards and evasiveness. This incident served as a reminder that true leadership involves not just making decisions, but also being willing to face scrutiny and to respond with honesty and clarity. As a result, it marked a meaningful step forward in fostering a political culture rooted in integrity, setting a new benchmark for how accountability should be conducted in the modern era. The interview, which was originally intended to serve as a strategy to mitigate damage and restore some measure of public confidence, unexpectedly transformed into yet another viral sensation within the ongoing saga of Bondi's public relations woes. Instead of softening her image or easing her critics' voices, the exchange amplified the spotlight on her, turning a potentially routine inquiry into a moment that would be dissected, shared, and discussed across countless social media platforms. For experts in law and politics alike, the confrontation between Crockett and Bondi represented much more than just a challenging or strained moment faced by a single political figure. It revealed the profound influence of meticulous preparation, precise execution, and unwavering persistence when it comes to holding those in power accountable for their words and actions. Harvard law professor Lawrence Tribe, widely regarded for his legal insight and expertise, expressed his admiration via social media, stating that every law student should analyze Representative Crockett's line of questioning of Pam Bondi. It's a prime example that effective cross-examination does not need dramatics or aggressive personal attacks. Instead, it relies on a careful, methodical presentation of the witness's own words and deeds, compelling them to confront their own contradictions. Tribe's words underscored the fundamental principle that sharp legal interrogation hinges on preparation and clarity rather than theatrics or emotional rhetoric. Joyce Vance, a former prosecutor and respected legal analyst, shared her agreement. emphasizing that the true power of Crockett's approach lay not only in the factual substance of her inquiries, but also in her tactical presentation. What set Crockett's questioning apart was her mastery in presenting complex facts in a straightforward manner, effectively closing any loopholes or opportunities for evasion. She refused to allow Bondi to control the narrative or sidetrack the discussion into unrelated issues. Instead, Crockett maintained unwavering focus, compelling Bondi to confront the inconsistencies and contradictions inherent in her responses. This approach exemplified genuine accountability in action, a process driven not by confrontational theatrics, but by disciplined and principled interrogation, designed to illuminate the truth. Remarkably, just a fortnight after the hearing, polling data revealed a significant shift in the public's perception of both individuals involved. Prior to the exchange, Pam Bondi enjoyed a favorable rating of over 52% among Republican voters, and was widely regarded as a credible and authoritative voice on legal and constitutional issues across the political spectrum. However, following Crockett's diligent questioning, her favorability ratings among Republican voters sharply declined to just over 31%. Concurrently, nearly 70% of independent voters reported feeling that Bondi appeared less credible and trustworthy than they had before the exchange. The impact on Crockett's own profile was equally striking. Before the hearing, she was a relatively obscure figure outside her district and within progressive circles, known mainly for her local work and advocacy. Now, after just that brief public confrontation, over 64% of Americans recognized her name, and 58% viewed her favorably, an impressive feat for a newcomer in national politics. Even more noteworthy was that nearly 32% of Republicans expressed appreciation for her focus on accountability, despite disagreements with her political stance or ideology. Such cross-party recognition underscored her emerging reputation as a principled and formidable advocate for truth and transparency. The overall consensus among political commentators and analysts was unmistakably clear. In a mere 5-minute exchange, Jasmine Crockett had not only illuminated the contradictions and inconsistencies in Pam Bondi's record and public statements, but also fundamentally altered the trajectories of both their political careers. Bondi, once perceived as a rising star within the conservative legal sphere with promising prospects for a judicial appointment or even election to higher office, found herself suddenly and severely challenged in her credibility. The confrontation served as a stark reminder that political fortunes can change rapidly, especially in the age of instant media and constant public scrutiny. Meanwhile, Crockett had solidified her position as a tenacious and principled voice, advocating for accountability and integrity, placing her firmly on the path toward a potentially influential and impactful political future. Perhaps the most enduring effect of this incident, however, extended beyond the immediate political fallout. It cast a long shadow on how the American public perceives political discourse itself. In an era often marked by performative outrage, superficial soundbites, and partisan posturing, Crockett's display of rigor, calm professionalism, and factual clarity stood out as a beacon of honest and principled interrogation. She demonstrated convincingly that holding powerful figures accountable does not necessitate shouting matches or personal insults, but is fundamentally rooted in steadfastness, preparation, and the unwavering pursuit of truth. Her approach resonated with many voters and observers as a refreshing departure from the often contentious and performative style that has too frequently characterized contemporary political debates. One voter from Ohio shared his impressions in a heartfelt letter to her local newspaper, remarking, "While I may not agree with Representative Crockett on every issue, I sincerely appreciate the way she conducted herself during that hearing. She didn't seek to humiliate or dominate Pam Bondi. Instead, she pursued justice and accountability through calm, focused, and principled questioning, showing that integrity and respect can still define effective political discourse." This sentiment encapsulated the broader recognition of Crockett's exemplification of a more principled kind of politics, one rooted not in spectacle, but in substance, honesty, and the fearless pursuit of truth. She simply held her accountable for her words and actions, insisting that individuals in positions of influence should be evaluated honestly and transparently based on their own deeds. This approach, rooted in integrity and unwavering commitment to truth, is exactly the kind of honesty and straightforwardness that our political culture desperately needs more of, regardless of party affiliations or ideological divides. It is a principle that transcends partisanship and reminds us all of the fundamental importance of personal responsibility and accountability in public life. 3 months following that pivotal hearing, the presence of Ms. Bond in the public eye continued to be rare and meticulously curated. Her appearances at public events and media engagements remained sparse, each carefully planned and controlled to maintain a specific image. During this period, she chose to step down from 2 of her corporate board memberships, citing her desire to concentrate on other professional pursuits, seemingly attempting to shift focus away from recent controversies or scrutiny. Her name had become noticeably absent from lists of potential judicial nominees and figures considered for political candidacy, signaling a quiet retreat from the limelight and perhaps an attempt to reshape her public image away from controversy. It was, however, that brief but impactful 5-minute exchange with Representative Jasmine Crockett that fundamentally shifted her trajectory in the realm of public consciousness. That short but powerful interaction left a lasting imprint, altering how many perceived her role in the political arena. Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett had rapidly risen as one of the most sought-after voices within Democratic politics. Her questioning style, marked by precision, firm reliance on facts, and a simplicity that rendered complex issues comprehensible and devastating, had become more than just a tactic. It had turned into a paradigm of effective oversight and accountability. Her approach demonstrated, in an era dominated by quick soundbites, theatrical performances, and superficial debates, that genuine substance and unwavering integrity still mattered profoundly. The exchange between these 2 women, one an established political veteran with decades of connections and influence, and the other a relatively new, emerging representative still learning the intricacies of Washington's political labyrinth, transformed into much more than a viral moment on social media. It evolved into a symbolic touchstone for meaningful discussions about the core values of accountability, consistency, and the responsibilities inherent in public service. Within classrooms of political science, law schools, campaign strategy rooms, and newsrooms across the nation, the lesson was clear and resonant. When a person is armed with facts, stays focused on the substantive issues rather than theatrical spectacle, and remains committed to honesty, even a brief 5-minute exchange can alter the course of political discourse permanently. Jasmine Crockett's demonstration that truth, when meticulously presented, remains the most potent weapon in the arsenal of public dialogue, proved to be a defining moment for many. It illuminated the fact that authenticity and rigor still hold their ground amid the chaos of modern political showboating. Conversely, Pam Bondi came to realize too late that a career built on shifting principles, ethics that are selectively applied, and strategic ambiguity cannot withstand the force of genuine accountability when confronted with unwavering factual integrity. Her earlier efforts to maintain a flexible stance ultimately proved insufficient against the stark clarity of Crockett's incisive questioning and unwavering adherence to truth. Perhaps the final reflection on this dramatic exchange belongs to Jasmine Crockett herself. When she was asked about that remarkable 5-minute interaction during a town hall in her district, her response revealed the essence of her approach. "My primary responsibility isn't to score political points or to create viral moments. My duty is to faithfully represent my constituents by seeking the truth, holding those in power accountable, and ensuring that their actions align with the principles they claim to uphold." Those were her words, succinct yet profound. She explained that her role was straightforward. She simply asked straightforward questions about Miss Bondi's record, allowing her own words and actions to serve as unambiguous indicators of integrity or the lack thereof. Crockett emphasized that her intention was not to trap or embarrass, but to illuminate truths that the American public deserved to see. Her conviction was clear. The nation's citizens are intelligent and perceptive enough to recognize inconsistency and duplicity when they observe it. Her effort was not merely a political confrontation, but a moment of societal clarity, an awakening that reminded the American people what genuine accountability should look like in their elected representatives. While Pam Bondi might eventually manage to rebuild some fragment of her public standing or reputation, she will forever carry the memory of that moment as a turning point, a reminder that her credibility, her authority to speak and be trusted, was fundamentally altered. The impact of that brief exchange made it so that she could no longer speak with the same unchallenged authority that may have once characterized her. Her words, once taken at face value, now bear the weight of scrutiny, and her moral authority was called into question in a way that can never be entirely erased. In just 5 minutes, Jasmine Crockett did far more than merely question a witness. She essentially reset the benchmarks for what public service and political integrity should be. That small yet powerful moment served as a stark reminder that integrity, accountability, transparency, and truth are the foundational elements that define effective and honorable leadership, values that, when demonstrated convincingly, can have a ripple effect far beyond a single hearing or debate. If you found this reflection on Jasmine Crockett's mastery of accountability and her demonstration of genuine political integrity inspiring or enlightening, it is worth noting how such moments are crucial in shaping the future of American politics. The power of clarity, honesty, and unwavering commitment to truth can transform even brief encounters into lasting lessons. Such instances remind us all that the core principles of responsible governance are never out of fashion, and that moments of truth, no matter how short, can influence the course of history. Never forget the importance of these lessons. When honesty and substance come to the forefront, they have the power to challenge and change even the most entrenched political narratives. The impact of those 5 minutes will be remembered as a pivotal point where accountability was uplifted, integrity reaffirmed, and the standards of political discourse elevated, a testament to the enduring power of truth in the arena of public life. Please feel free to share your insights on Crockett's approach to questioning by leaving a comment below. We are eager to hear your opinions on how he handles interviews and what makes his technique stand out. Additionally, if there's a particular political confrontation or debate that you find particularly intriguing or significant, we would love to know which one you would like us to analyze or discuss in future content. Your suggestions help us understand what topics resonate most with our audience, and we appreciate your active involvement in shaping our coverage. Whether it's a historic debate, a recent showdown, or a notable political figure's confrontation, don't hesitate to let us know which moments you find most worth exploring in detail.